I've already talked about how video games aren't just for kids, but now I want to ask the question, are video games just as fun for us now as adults as they were back when we were kids? The thing is, the circumstances around which we play video games are much different now as adults than they were when we were kids. As far as how many games we have, how many systems we have, just what's available, with the addition of all these new modern games. And the reason why I bring this up is that the idea for a lot of us retro gamers is to recapture the type of joy we felt when we experienced playing video games as kids. Well, spoiler alert, we ain't kids anymore, and things are just different. One of the biggest differences that people like to point out is just how many more games we have now as adults. Since we have disposable incomes and we're not just stupid kids begging for games anymore, we now can buy as many games as we want, in effect. And so this can be both a good thing and a bad thing, depending how you look at it. On one hand, we get more games, so we're able to play all these different things. We can play whatever we want. On the bad side, you maybe don't appreciate what you have as much. I mean, something I know a lot of you have talked about that you can relate to is that when we were kids, every time we got a game, it was like a big deal. Like, oh my God, I got a new game. Now it's like, whatever, these things are just showing up in the mail all the time, or, we're picking up big lots of them all at once at conventions or yard sales or whatever, wherever we got them. That isn't to say that a lot of us don't appreciate the games we have now, but I tell you, it was just different back then. A point that I want to make as it relates specifically to retro games is that these are games that we've potentially already played when we were younger. So in that way, we've already experienced them brand new. With playing them now, it's just like reliving old memories. So you don't get that fresh, new experience of playing a game you've never played before. Now, sure, some retro games we're playing for the first time, but as it relates to those specific games that we've already played, the situation is different. Let me bring up a specific example to illustrate my point. So back the first time I played Pokemon, I was like 9 or 10 years old. And it was a really big deal because not only were there the video games that were really popular, there were the trading cards, there was the TV show. It just dominated everywhere. It was such a big deal. You really can't know what it was like unless you lived through it. And being a young kid at the age, I was like ripe for the opportunity. But anyways, maybe some of you think Pokemon's dumb now. That's besides the point. Anyways, the first experience I had playing those Pokemon games was naturally very magical. And there's no way I would have had that experience now as an adult if I had never played the games before and then just played them for the first time now. That being said, I did play them a little bit ago, and because of that nostalgia I have for them, it was quite a bit of fun and really took me back to sort of what it felt like as a kid. But still, it just wasn't the same as that first time I played as a kid. That being said, there actually are quite a few instances where I enjoy a game more now as an adult than I did when I played it as a kid. And a big part of that is just being better at the games. When you can actually get to the end of the game, or even maybe just past the first few couple of levels. I mean, some of those games I couldn't even get past the first stage or two. That does a lot to enhance the enjoyment. And other stuff too, like understanding the different mechanics of the game and how to play it better and all that kind of stuff. One interesting thing I want to point out too is that we are a lot more critical of games now as adults than we were as kids. As kids, pretty much every single game there was, if it was a video game, it was awesome, so long as we were the ones who owned it. If it was some kid we didn't like who owned it, or it was the rival console or whatever, yeah, sure, we'd be glad to call it a piece of crap. Crappy games, crappy console, whatever. But if we owned it, even if it was a game that we would say is a complete turd now, as kids, we would say that game is amazing. Funny how that works, right? And of course, we're willing to say some of these games are bad now as adults, but as kids, we would not. We'd defend our games to the death. Okay, so I've talked about a lot of the differences between playing video games as a kid compared to playing video games now as adults. But the question still remains, with all things being equal, does joy just come more naturally to kids when it comes to playing video games? It's an interesting question because we were a lot more innocent as kids. Times were just simpler and we weren't bogged down by all the responsibilities of life that would come later on as adults. And so trying to recapture that type of joy we felt as kids serves almost as a relief from all the stuff that we have to deal with as adults, because some of us have been hammered, and I mean absolutely hammered, by the realities of adulthood. And so we really need that just to keep ourselves sane. Let me let you in on kind of a funny little thought process I have when evaluating certain people. Now, I think everybody knows somebody in their life who's like this, where they're just very into the adult things. It's like, it seems like that's their entire life, is just all this serious adult stuff. And I always look at those people and I feel bad for them that they don't play video games. I'm just like, man, what a depressing life to be somebody who doesn't play video games. Now, obviously, it doesn't have to be video games specifically, but just anything more childlike. You know, they always say embrace your inner child, and that's because it's true. We need that to be well-balanced, happy, healthy individuals. And because of all of this, I don't really think it's an either-or question where it's either you had more fun as a kid or more fun as an adult. I think it's a complementary thing, because what we're trying to do as adults is recapture that feeling we had as a kid. So that experience we had as a kid serves as a basis for what we're going to feel now as adults. One of the better trends that's been happening that makes me really happy to think about is just how more culturally accepted video games are becoming, whether it be kids or adults playing them. Now, obviously, this is because a lot of the people who grew up playing video games are now adults with kids of their own, and they're passing this mindset on. But anyways, what I want to ask you all for this video is, what does it mean to you personally to be able to play video games now as an adult? And how much does that connect to how you felt as a kid playing some of these games? I'd really love to hear your answers on this one. I know a lot of you probably have some really cool things to say, and I'm looking forward to reading all those comments. So be sure to leave those down below, and I will see ya in the next video.